Hey everyone, today is Monday the 27th, and I hope you've had a good weekend. I hope that you have enjoyed the World War II unit. I obviously am not there. I'll be back after spring break. I do want to talk today. I know it's a Monday and it's not perhaps the most uplifting way to begin, but I do want today to talk about the Holocaust. I think there's no way for us to really go through a unit on World War II without sort of mentioning this massive event that unfolded in the European theater. So let's talk a little bit about it. But first, some announcements. Don't forget that your test is this week. The study guide is posted or will be posted by the time you see this video. If you are in periods 4 or 6, your test is on Wednesday. If you're in periods 3, 5, or 7, your test is on Thursday. I'm planning to hold an afternoon open Zoom office hour probably tomorrow afternoon, depending on what my schedule is like. I'll make an announcement about that. Don't forget about your European and Pacific Theater quizzes. These are easy, open note, but also will really help you review. You'll spend tomorrow reviewing. The study guide is posted. And I think that's pretty much all of my announcements. On Friday, which will be the last day before spring break, we'll start talking about the Cold War. Right, we'll do a little bit about the Cold War. Then you go away for a spring break. When we come back on April 10th, I will be there, and we will keep going. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's talk about the Holocaust. So, I guess the first thing to do is to really define what the Holocaust was. And it was the specific effort of Hitler and the Nazi German government to answer the Jewish question, which is what should they do with the Jewish population of Europe? And the answer with the final solution, which is kill them all. I want to be careful here with the way I'm wording this. And I do say that the Nazi German government, the National Socialist Party was in charge of Germany at the time. And so all of Germany was run by the National Socialists, by the Nazis. But I want to distinguish this period from 1933 to 1945, the Nazi period, from the rest of German history. The vast majority of German history, at least in the last 150 years, has been quite welcoming and open to people of other religions. This is a particularly bad period, obviously. So I want to make sure that I'm being purposeful with the language that I'm using. Well, let's start with who was in charge. Obviously we've talked a little bit about Adolf Hitler. His official title was Reichsführer, the head of the SS, which was the Schutzstaffel, the particular part of the German government that operated the concentration camps, as well as carried out a lot of the mass killings. That was Heinrich Himmler. And then on the right, you see Hermann Göring. He was the head of the Luftwaffe. Which was the German Air Force, Luftwaffe, but also he was heavily involved in the planning, organization, and carrying out of the Holocaust as well. Continuing, we have Adolf Eichmann. He's the gentleman there on the left who looks kind of like Graham Chapman, if you know anything about Monty Python. He was the member of the Nazi government, the high-ranking official who was literally in charge of organizing it, and by organizing the final solution. By that I mean, how many trains do they need? How many concentration camps? Where do we build tracks? How many staff members? How many camp commandants do we need? The actual sort of basic details of the final solution of the Holocaust were down to Adolf Eichmann and his team to organize. His story is an interesting one. He escaped Germany after the war and settled in Argentina. And he was tracked down in Argentina in the early 1960s by Mossad agents. That would be agents of the Israeli version of the CIA, and captured and flown out of Buenos Aires and back to Tel Aviv. And he was, tried on national television, international television, really, and was executed. The only person that Israel's ever executed in this way. In the center, we have Reinhard Heydrich, who was in charge of the conference where the final solution was organized. He was murdered, or he was assassinated during the war. He was known as perhaps the most cruel of all of the Nazi leaders, which is, to be fair, saying something, because the Nazi leaders were not known for their compassion and their warmth. And on the right, we have Hans Frank, who was the governor general of the general government, which was occupied Poland, where most of in fact, all of the death camps were. We'll talk about the death camps in a second. He was in charge of organizing that area, of running that area, of governing that area, and he was also executed at the end of the, by the Allies after the war. So, what was the strategy? How was the Holocaust carried out? Well, it was in steps. When Hitler and the Nazis came to power in 1933, sort of the first step was confining the Jewish population of first Germany and then Germany and Austria and then whatever area that Germany controlled into specific areas called ghettos. They were, these ghettos were guarded. They were sort of barred in. And as time went on, the ghettos were shrunk. They were tiny. They were filthy. They were unhygienic. And that was by design. The more Jews who would be killed in the ghettos, the better, according to the Nazis. This is a picture of the ghetto in Łódź, Poland. I know it looks like Lodz, but you got to trust me that it's pronounced Łódź, the Lodz word there. This is a picture of it, obviously before, all the inhabitants of the ghetto were evacuated. The next step after this was called liquidation. When the Nazi Party and the SS decided that it was time for the ghetto to be cleared out, and oftentimes that meant that the SS would go door to door, making sure that everyone had been evacuated, and they were sent off on trains, packed into train cars, and sent off to concentration camps. Generally speaking, to the nearest concentration camp, to wherever the ghetto was. This picture that I've included here is liquidation of the ghetto in Krakow, Poland. The people that you sort of see in the back, the inhabitants of the ghetto, the Jews from Krakow, were almost certainly sent to Auschwitz, which is really not far from Krakow. We'll see a map in a second, and there's a high probability that most of the Jews you can see in this picture were killed within the next few days after the picture was taken. The final step were, of course, concentration and death camps. And I want to make a distinction between these two things. Concentration camps were set up really for slave labor of Jews, Roma, communists, homosexuals, and other, quote, enemies of the Reich. If the prisoners died during their incarceration in these camps, that was fine, according to the Nazis, but they weren't set up specifically for mass murder on a industrial scale. The same way the 6 camps that we call death camps were. We're going to go through them in a second. You'll see them on a map. But these 6 camps were set up for the sole purpose of murder. Murder on a large scale. Murder as quickly as possible. Thousands and thousands a day. So here we have a map of sort of Germany and the western part of the Soviet Union. Different concentration camps. And if you see the skull and crossbones, you'll see the extermination camps. They're all, generally speaking, near large cities. So you have Chełmno, which is near Łódź. You have Treblinka, near Warsaw. You have Majdanek and Sobibor, near Lublin, and Bużec, which is also sort of near both Lublin and Lviv. And then you have Auschwitz-Birkenau, which is near Krakow. And, you see all the other concentration camps sort of spread out. None were good. Some were substantially worse than others. You can get into that on your own time if you'd like. I have some pictures of the different camps. This is Treblinka. This was where the overwhelming majority of the inhabitants of Warsaw, the Jewish inhabitants of Warsaw, ended up. Close to 1 million Jews were murdered in Treblinka alone. This is Auschwitz-Birkenau. This is the entrance to Birkenau. We'll see another picture of this from my visit there in a little bit. But you see there's train tracks. So the Jews being sort of shipped off from Krakow and the sort of other parts of the area would arrive through these gates on cattle cars, and they would, meet their fate one way or the other. Bużec, another camp where set up specifically for murder. This was one that was sort of where the Nazis experimented with poison gas. Chełmno they didn't use poison gas so much as they used carbon monoxide. Jews and prisoners would be loaded into the back of these trucks. The trucks would be driven down the road for 15 or 20 minutes while carbon monoxide was pumped into the back, and then the corpses would be unloaded. Majdanek. Majdanek was the camp that was very close to Lublin. In fact, and I put a map here so you can sort of see, it was so close to Lublin that people, residents, were able to smell the burning bodies. So that when you hear the argument that, you know, there's not evidence, that people couldn't have known, that the people in the Poland were entirely innocent, well, this is an argument against that. I mean, anyone who's ever accidentally burned their arm or their hand over a candle knows that the smell of burning hair and flesh is very, very specific. And, you know, the smell of thousands of burning bodies is even that much more potent. So there's no way that the residents of Lublin did not know. So at the end of the war, camps were liberated basically by whichever army got there first. The farther east the camp was, the more likely it was that the camp was liberated by the Soviet Union, like Auschwitz was. The farther west it was, especially the camps that were in Germany, the more likely it was that it was liberated by America or Britain. Those would be camps like Bergen-Belsen or Ravensbrück, and certainly Dachau. Liberation, we see a video, I'm going to post it on Canvas, about liberation and the difficult moment that brought, even for the survivors. Happy, joyful, but certainly difficult, as they would confront what had been taken away from them. And I'm not going to, I'll post that video so you can see. I'm not going to spend time in this recording doing that. I just wanted to include a couple of videos. I went to Poland in 2005, so 18 years ago, and took pictures. This is walking into the camp of Auschwitz I. It's the very famous Arbeit macht frei sign, which means literally "work will make you free," is intended sort of ironically by the Nazis. This is the part of Auschwitz that was specifically a work camp, a slave labor camp. This was not the part of Auschwitz where there was the mass murder that we sort of think of. That was at this place. This is the ruins of a crematorium in Birkenau. You see the bricks, which are charred permanently with thousands upon thousands of burnt bodies. This is the hole in the ceiling through which the Zyklon B gas would come into the death chamber. This is a picture that I took. It was I've touched it up because it was very, very dark at the time. It was gray. Poland in May is cold and dreary. But we're walking into Auschwitz-Birkenau. We walked from one camp to the other. It's called the March of the Living. We heard Elie Wiesel speak. It was a I don't know if fun is the right word for spending the day in Auschwitz, but it was a significantly important moment in my life, certainly. Again, the train of people that were walking. In Jerusalem and in Israel, there's this museum called Yad Vashem, and it's the Israeli Holocaust Museum. It sort of takes the person who's visiting it through the course of the Holocaust. Anyone who's been to the museum in DC, it's similar. I think the DC museum is actually better, but hold on one second. I want to go back to I want to show the end of the museum. Well, maybe I didn't put it. Oh yeah, here it is. So the way the museum is structured is that you go through the story of the Holocaust, and then at the end you come to this sort of opening, and it overlooks the Judean hills, the hills right outside Jerusalem, sort of telling a story of trauma to success, and you know, in the sense of the founding of Israel. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, what I want to do. I want you guys to do is first watch the video about liberation that I posted on Canvas. You can do that individually. And then there's an assignment that requires you to look at different memorials in Europe. I think there's 5 of them. I want you to evaluate which one do you think is the most effective at commemorating the Holocaust? Which one do you think is the most emotionally effective? That's it, effective with an A. Which one do you think you would... Which one do you think that it just is the best of the memorials? That's not a museum. It's a different thing. Which one is the best memorial? and make sure you submit that. Everybody needs to do it. This is an individual assignment, but you can certainly, as I say in the directions, talk with someone in your number group about the memorials if you want to sort of bounce ideas off somebody else. Other than that, you guys can certainly reach out if you have any questions. I will see you guys in 2 weeks. All right. Take care.